This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Diogo comes up with the goods as the Reds bat away the hammers despite a VAR fright at Anfield. Welcome to the Debrief live here on the Blood Red channel as Liverpool see off West Ham United 2-1. I'm Guy Clarke. Alongside me, Matt, Addison and Theo Squires. Gentlemen, it was rather lacklustre in the first half, but fireworks by the final whistle. What did we make of it? Theo, come to you first.
It's basically what we've come accustomed to seeing from Liverpool so far this season. I think they've been very slow starting games and they've eased into the matches and eventually they grind out and get the result. It's pretty much why they won the Premier League last year after lockdown, for most of those games winning it by an odd goal here and there, winning it with late goals. And I think when that was in a season when they were the best team by far, it was always going to be the case more this year, when you've got all of these top managers complaining about the number of injuries, the number of games they're playing. Players are going to be tired. There's not a lot of training going on at training grounds with them having to have recovery all the time. So they're always going to be slow starting for these games and not at their best. And it's why Liverpool are one of the best teams in Europe. The fact that it doesn't matter what level they're playing at, 9 times out of 10, they still find a way to win. And it's what they've done today.
Yeah, let's eulogise about that winning goal first, Matt, and then we'll get into some of the key performances. Diogo Jota, he's done it again at Anfield for the Reds, and much like he did in midweek, Xherdan Shaqiri providing a brilliant assist.
Yeah, obviously the first one was ruled out with the VAR review, and obviously Diogo Jota just gets up and carries on, and Liverpool looked like they were going to break through it at some point. Obviously they just kept going and going and going, and yeah, as you say, the pass from Xherdan Shaqiri, absolutely superb. Every single angle you watch it at, it just gets better and better, and it was, as you say, again, very, very similar to the one that we saw on Tuesday night. A really sort of perfect through ball. It had to be to get through that back line of West Ham, playing 5 and then 4 immediately in front. It was always going to be a really difficult one to break through. But when you saw Diogo Jota and Xherdan Shaqiri come off the bench, you thought that they would create at least one chance, and that's what proved to be the case. Obviously, the pass, absolutely inch perfect, as I say, it absolutely had to be. And obviously, Diogo Jota threw on goal. He was never going to miss. So, yeah, it was a really nicely worked goal. And I think just about on the balance of play, Liverpool, certainly deserved to get that win over the line. It was just a case of whether they'd be able to create enough of a chance. And certainly Diogo Jota, straight through on goal, managed to finish it off nicely.
Was it harsh on Diogo Jota, Theo, that he didn't start the game in the first place?
Potentially, but as mentioned before, with these games coming thick and fast, Jurgen Klopp is going to have to rotate his options. But I think it's getting to that time now where Roberto Firmino, another anonymous display, you are going to have to start questioning whether the go-to front three is still the go-to front three, because he's trying to play through back into form and it's not happening. And when you're turning onto the bench and Diogo Jota keeps, when he's given the chance, and delivering the goods, it's only a matter of time before he is starting games regularly. But if Jurgen Klopp doesn't have to make that decision just yet, he's not going to be complaining, because if he's got this match-winning substitute off the bench, it's a great option for him to have. We've seen it in the past with Divock Origi. He was the go-to off the bench and he was doing the business. Liverpool, they've gone up a step, has gone up a level since then, and it's just brilliant. Every time you see Jota on the pitch, you're expecting him to deliver the goods. He was unlucky, obviously, not to have a brace tonight. I think it was the right decision to disallow his first one, but great instinct from him to get the rebound. And now it was a great finish, managed to get out the way of Sadio Mane, didn't he, for the winning goal. But it's why Liverpool signed him. It's why they spent £40 million on him. Eyebrows might have been raised at that price and at the signing coming out the blue then. But now, a month, 6 weeks later, it's already looking an inspired piece of business from Liverpool.
4th time in 7 matches already this season, Matt, that the Reds have conceded the first goal. Of course, they've come back to win 3 of those. They won, I think, 5 of 8 that they fell behind and conceded the first goal in last season. But surely this is a trick that can't keep needing to be repeated.
No, it's one of those, isn't it, where I think we have to balance it between praising Liverpool for showing that character, coming back, winning by a goal. I think they only won by a goal, or won only by a goal, but on 14 different occasions last season. So it's one of those where I suppose the focus in a positive way is the fact that they have come back and they have done that. But West Ham very easily could have held on at the end there. If Diogo Jota doesn't get that pass from Shaqiri, I think we could be talking about the game in a very different way. So obviously, Liverpool going forward with so many matches and that sort of thing, you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself to do that. obviously going into the game, there was a few question marks over who might start at the back, and Nat Phillips is the one who comes in. In the end, it's a mistake actually from Joe Gomez, who is, I think, a couple of months younger, but certainly a lot more inexperienced. And I suppose that was the surprise, wasn't it, really, that it was Joe Gomez that made that mistake. But you are right. To say that Liverpool have gone behind so many times already this season, I think that is a slightly concerning pattern, albeit one that they have managed to turn around successfully so far. So, yeah, I think just in terms of the ease of getting the 3 points, making sure that they do things, without having to produce a little bit of magic, because, Shaqiri isn't going to do something as brilliant as that every time. There might be certain occasions where defences do get the better of them. You want to try and get back to keeping clean sheets. I think it's something like 15 goals from 26 shots that Liverpool have conceded so far this season. That does have to improve, and defensively Liverpool do have to get better, but I suppose you do have to, at the same time, just praise them really for coming back and getting the 3 points, regardless of that, as much as that does have to improve.
I think it will come in time, won't it? The defensive displays. Like, Liverpool have been so used to Virgil van Dijk just being available for every single game, and every week when we've done a team selector, it's just been the go-to back five. It's untouchable. You know who's starting, and it's only this season where you got to second guess it. It is chop and changing every week. You might have that familiarity with the fullbacks keeping their places, but they've still got to get used to the whole back four. They've still had to get used to Adrian back in goal, and then Alisson coming back, getting his sharpness up. They are going to concede goals when they're not used to playing alongside each other, and I think it's taken for granted a bit that familiarity they did have with Van Dijk's there. Say Fabinho's back, and he's going to be the go-to option until Van Dijk's fit, just because you expect him to be fit more times than Joel Matip. You'd like to think around Christmas time, New Year, after a good month of the same back four, that these sort of problems have been eradicated because they're used to playing against each other. But I think for the next few weeks, it's just going to have to be something that fans are going to have to get used to while Liverpool's defence finds their feet. It's something Jurgen Klopp has alluded to in the past. They're obviously going to be working on it when they can. It's just one of those things that pretty much teams all around the country at the moment are conceding goals, and Liverpool will be no different.
Yeah, let's not get too carried away, but he was given the man of the match, the Premier League man of the match at the end of the game. The Bolton Baresi, we might well be able to dub him. Theo, what did you make of Nat Phillips' performance?
I thought he played well. As Jurgen Klopp said in the week, that he was surprised that he stayed at the club. It's the reason why he's not had his opportunity before. He's always been very unlucky that whenever there has been an opening in the Liverpool defence, it's been when he's been injured. The reason he's not in the Champions League squad is because they thought he was going to get sold. And he's finally had his chance in the Premier League. And he put in a pretty good showing, really, considering he hasn't had much game time so far this season, even for the second string. It's just what you expect from him. He is more of this traditional centre-back. He'll go up and win headers. He's a bit old-fashioned. He's not what you expect from the Liverpool defence. That's probably why he doesn't have a long-term future at the club. But he's worked so hard on his game. He said it himself. The managers said it himself. And I think it was a reward for him to get that opportunity today. I know when we do our team predictor, a lot of my colleagues were saying Reece Williams, they expected him to start. But I always had a feeling it would be Nat Phillips, because I think if he was in the Champions League squad, he'd have the nod ahead of him anyway, just because he's a bit older. He's had that season in the Bundesliga too. It's a bit more about him there. Like, when you're thinking of raw options at the back, that's more of a risk. And the only reason that, as I said, Phillips hasn't had the opportunities in the past is just opportunities have gone against him. Now he's had his chance, shown what he can do. Could have a couple more games in his legs before Fabinho's back fully fit. But it's one of those where, is it going to be he's keeping the place for the Premier League games? Because if he is, that means he could be playing against Manchester City. And that'll be a really baptism of fire for him when he's had to wait so long for his opportunity.
Yeah, before we go, Jurgen Klopp's press conference to come, but Matt, you have the final word. Your thoughts on Nat Phillips, and as well Curtis Jones, who was given a first Premier League start of the season.
Yeah, Nat Phillips, first of all, I think it was probably a game that almost suited him the way that he plays. He is very, very good in the air. That is obviously, with his height and with his strength, that is something that he does bring to the table. That is probably something that Joe Gomez isn't particularly good at, to be honest. I thought, against Haller in particular, he looked really, really good, Nat Phillips. And suppose Salah didn't do a great deal in the game. He was, pretty poor, but that is a big strength of West Ham. They are a big team. You think of players like Souček and others like him. It's obviously something that David Moyes will have looked at to try and exploit in that Liverpool back four. But yeah, I thought, Nat Phillips stepped up and did really, really well. I think it'll be a very, very different game, obviously, against Manchester City. They have very different threats. It's not going to be a case of there being a striker to throw the ball up to or anything like that. So I'd be surprised if he was still in for that game, just because it's, a very different sort of contest. And Curtis Jones as well, another promising step forward for him. I thought there was a few occasions where he just took a few extra touches that he probably didn't need to, and almost slowed the game down at times when he could have done with just maybe playing it, one or two touch. But he was far from the only one in that midfield, I would say. Certainly there was a couple of moments where, one or two of them were doing very, very similar things. So, yeah, it's another promising one for Curtis Jones. I wasn't too surprised that he was the one who came off. And, when that substitution was made, I'm sure he probably would have expected his number to come up. But it was another, 60 or so minutes for him. Another Premier League start for him, his first of this season, I think. So, yeah, it's another step forward. And I think we saw a little bit of the promise that Curtis Jones has got, but there's far bigger and better things to come from him, I think, going forward.
Yeah, certainly is the case. Well, Liverpool then coming from behind to win at Anfield. Liverpool 2, West Ham United 1 sends the Reds top of the Premier League table as it stands. Will they still be there at the end of the weekend? We'll have to wait and see. Jurgen Klopp's post-match press conference to come here on the Blood Red channel. Do join us. Thanks for joining us on Facebook and also on YouTube. From myself, Guy Clarke, Theo Squires and Matt Addison, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.
This is the Blood Red Podcast.